Today we analyze month number 6 of the Golden Age of comic books. This was the 6th month since Superman had debuted, and therefore we have Action Comics number 6 out this month, featuring the 6th appearance of Superman. And Action Comics number 6 is the most valuable comic by far on the newsstands, with a cover date of November 1938. In total, we see that 23 different titles were on the newsstands with that cover date, and 23 titles is tied for the highest number ever so far in comic book history to this point. Looking at our chart, we're going to study the rarity of these books and their price guide values and collectability. So Action Comics number 6 by far has the highest copies graded by the CGC, 36 copies in total, only one high-grade copy, however. In the Overstreet price guide, the book is by far the most valuable, worth over $3,000 in low grade and $58,000 in high grade. This is more than 50%, or about 50% roughly, of the entire month's total if you were to collect a complete set. Let's see what else stands out for us this month. The rarity of many of these 1930s comics is still so great that 7 of these 23 books have never had a single copy graded by CGC in any condition, and that even includes restored and qualified copies. The DC comics are by far usually the highest and most valuable and highly collected, therefore that usually brings them out. But even looking at that, we see there's just not that many copies. Adventure Comics number 32 is actually the debut issue of that series, as the title changed with this issue 32 this month. But there's only 16 copies in total graded. Also for DC, Detective Comics number 21, only 12 copies graded in all conditions. And the rarest of all, More Fun Comics number 37 has only 8 copies graded in all conditions. That includes restored copies. All 4 DC copies have exactly 1 high-grade copy each. And these are 4 of the most valuable comic books on the list. The other major key book out this month is Jumbo Comics number 3, the first title from Fiction House, and this features some early Jack Kirby artwork, Will Eisner, etc., and $900 in low grade and $16,000 in high grade. Very highly collected series, and we note that Jumbo Comics number 1 through 8 were oversized, larger than the regular standard comic book, and therefore cannot be graded by CGC, which is why the early Jumbo Comics always show 0 on the CGC census for the early issues. What else do we see? Centaur Publications had the most number of titles on the newsstands that month, 6 of them, and these are all highly collected and quite scarce from this short-lived publisher, who happened to be the biggest publisher at the time in terms of quantity. And you see that on the CGC census, if we don't include the DC comics, that the most common comic of the month is Funny Pages Volume 2, number 11. 8 copies graded by CGC in all conditions, and there's 1 high-grade copy. And yet the price tag isn't that high, even though it's still a rare and popular book, $155 in low grade. So if we look at the general list, we see that the average book on this list, even though these are 80-year-old books, that the majority of these can be purchased in the $50 range in low grade, which is quite affordable, and yet these books are really quite scarce. So with 23 titles, if we assume the print run was an average of 200,000 copies per each issue, that means there were 4.6 million comics printed and on the newsstands that month. Well, out of 4.6 million comics, we find only 111 copies in total have been graded by the CGC in any condition. And out of the 4.6 million books, only 11 books have survived high grade and been graded by the CGC. The only book that seems to be more common in high grade is Mickey Mouse Magazine, number 38, with 3 copies. And the reason for this is that Western Comics actually kept file copies. So that has helped a few of them survive all these years. And yet that comic's still also fairly affordable, $54 in low grade. What else do we learn from the chart? At this time, there was over 450 different comics had been published in the New Standard Modern format since 1933. It had already been 5.5 years since the New Standard size was created, and now it was the mainstream most used format. So 7 of the comics I mentioned have 0 copies graded by CGC. That's still pretty hefty. That's about 30% of all the comics on the list have not a single copy graded by CGC. If you would like to collect a run of all of these titles, it'll cost you approximately $7,000 for a low-grade set, or a near mint 9.2 set. Guides at $112,000. But keep in mind, half of these books do not even have a high-grade copy ever graded by CGC. So you may never be able to obtain a truly high-grade copy of any of these books.